One.
Rabbi Sai, welcome to Yerushalmi Pesachim. We are holding Zayin Amud Aleph. Now we're about to start Alach Avav, the famous sugya of Rav Chanina Sigana Kohanim, which in Bavli is quite intricate. Yerushalmi is also quite intricate. In fact, there's like 6 plots of it, which for a sugya in Yerushalmi is really long. A bit of an introduction. We're going to talk about Tumah and Tahara, stopping things becoming Tameh. We're going to discuss about how in certain cases they allowed things of a lower degree to be burned with things of a higher degree Tumah. We're going to discuss that. Of course, the sources of Tumah. We know you have people can get Tameh, Kalim, foods, and the various degrees. You have Avi Avos HaTumah, you have the dead body, then you have an Abba Tumah like a Sheretz, Rishon L'Tumah, Sheni L'Tumah. Foods can become up to a Sheni normally, and of course Truma can go up to Shlishi, 3rd degree of Tumah. Kodshim can go up to the 4th degree of Tumah. Yeah, there are various levels of Tumah, and that these things sometimes can not only become Tameh themselves, but they can defile other things as well. Right? We're going to talk about people who can receive Tumah, and as I said, people, Kalim, food, drink, and there's difference, as we said, between Chulin and Truma and Kodshim. Different. The more holy something is, the higher level of Tumah it can have. Yeah? I was just still going through the introduction here at the moment. And it's things which have Kedusha. That's where you get this level of Tumah. Okay, Truma and Kodshim, Maser Sheni. You have to specially guard them. Okay, so we go to our Mishnah now. Now, you have Kodshim, which becomes Tameh. And if Kodshim becomes Tameh, you have to burn it. And usually we have to stop things becoming Tameh. And definitely you shouldn't defile it. Now, what about Kodshim, which is already Tameh? Can we add Tumah by burning it with something else, which is a higher degree Tumah? Or maybe, look, since it's anyway Tameh, then I don't need to guard it further. It's already Tameh. What's the difference if I burn it with something else on a higher degree Tumah? So this is where we're up to now. Rav Chanina Zigana Kohanim. So Rav Chanina, the deputy of the Kohanim, he said, Mimeim shal Kohanim. Now, always in the times of the Kohanim, lo nimnu milisrov zabasa. They did not prevent themselves from burning meat of Kodshim. Shunitma bevlada Tumah. Now we'll see, Vlada Tumah is also a question whether it's D'oraisa Drabanan, but whatever. Kodshim Shunitma bevlada Tumah. So because of a vlad, that means it touched a Rishon and became a Sheni. Yeah, so we've got Kodshim which touched a Rishon and became a Sheni L'Tumah. And they didn't stop burning it in Basar with another piece of meat, Shenitzma Ba'ava Tumah, which became Tameh on a more severe degree. It became Tameh because of an Av. So it touched an Av and became a Rishon. So that means you've got Kodshim which is a Sheni, you've got Kodshim which is a Rishon, and they didn't stop themselves from burning them together. Afapi, even though you are introducing a more higher level of Tumah al Tamasa. We are now, the meat, you're burning it with something which is more Tameh. We'll discuss this at great length. Okay? So this is the Eidos of Rav Chanina Sigana Kohanim tells us. They did not prevent themselves from burning meat of a lower degree Tumah with meat of a higher degree Tumah. Now we'll see. Different understanding in the Amoraim how to understand Rav Chanina Sigana. What is he getting at? Bar Kapara said, the meat that was Tameh Ava Tumah, which is mentioned in the Mishnah, means it became Tameh because of Ava Tumah, like a Sheretz or something like that, Devar Torah, from the Torah. And therefore this meat was a Rishon Tumah min HaTorah. So there was a biblical source to the original Tumah, and this is now a Rishon one, and this is also min HaTorah. What?
He's saying there's Ava Tumah and Rishon Tumah?
No, they're all forbidden. He's saying Rishon is also min HaTorah, and Av is min HaTorah. So what he's saying, we're going to see, because maybe those Drabanans coming in, but this opinion says no. This is all biblical ideas. So you've got meat which is Tameh min HaTorah, and through an Av, which was Tameh from the Torah, like a Sheretz. And this meat, therefore, was a Rishon for Tumah min HaTorah. Now, however, the other meat mentioned that got burnt with it was Tameh from a Vlada Tumah. Now, that means it was Tameh because of a Vlad Tumah midivrein, a rabbinical Rishon L'Tumah. So this meat that was Tameh from a Rishon, a rabbinical Rishon, is a rabbinical Sheni now. And Rav Chanina is giving evidence the Kohanim did not stop themselves from burning this meat which is only rabbinically tamei with the other meat which is biblically tamei. You hear? Even though through this, the meat will, until now, it was tahara min Torah. It was biblically pure. But now you're burning it with this tamei meat min Torah. You are being metame. You are defiling this meat, which until now is only rabbinically tamei. Do you understand? So that's a big chiddush here. That even though this is tamei min Torah and this is tamei rabbinically, they did not stop themselves from burning them together. And through this, by burning it together, now it will become tamei min Torah. Now you're burning it with the other meat, which is min Torah. Now, that's one way of looking at it. So that's how Bar Kapara is explaining it. That they did not stop themselves from burning a rabbinical impurity meat with a biblical tamei meat. Now we have another opinion. Rabbi Yochanan said, Bein zeh. Whether it's the meat that was tamei from Avatuma mentioned in the words of Chananya, Zegana Kohen, or the meat which is tamei because of the vlad, even the other meat. So the meat that was tamei because of Avatuma or Vladatuma, Dvar Torah, they're both biblical. It's not that one is rabbinical, they're both from the Torah Tuma. And this was the case where he said they still burnt them together. They're obviously not exactly the same. There must be some difference between them. One was tamei from an Av, one was tamei from a Rishon. But they're both biblically tamei. You understand? One might be more than the other, but again, they're both min Torah, they're both tamei. So those are the two opinions. So Bar Kapara says we're talking about a rabbinical thing with a biblical thing, and Rabbi Yochanan said, no, both of them are talking about meat which is tamei min Torah. One's from an Av, one's from a Vlad. Now, al date de Bar Kapara nicha. According to Bar Kapara, I understand what Chananya said, that burning the two meats together, you're adding tumah to that meat which is tamei from a Vlad, which was only rabbinical. In the beginning, it was tahar min Torah. Now, it's burning it with meat, which is tamei min Torah. Sorry, the other way around. At the beginning, it was tamei rabbinically, and now you're burning it with meat, which is tamei min Torah. And now it's going to become tamei min Torah. Okay? Adate de Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, everything is tamei min Torah. One from a Av, one from a Vlad. But Adate de Rabbi Yochanan, Avatuma. Now, the Avatuma makes the meat that touches it into a Rishon, a Tumah, first degree Tumah. So the meat that's tamei from an Av, that first piece of meat we're talking about, is a Rishon from the Torah. Vlada Tumah, Oisa, Sheni. Now the blood is like a Rishon, and any meat that touches it becomes a Sheni. So the other piece of meat is a Sheni. One piece of meat is a Rishon for Tumah min Torah. Are you with me? Is one stage. The other one is a second stage. And then when the meat, which is tamei because of the vlada tumah min Torah, it was a sheni min Torah, and they didn't stop burning that kodshim which was a sheni with kodshim which was a rishon. Now, sheni shenaga barishon, if a 2 touches a 1, what happens to it? It becomes a 2 again. So it's not changed. The sheni that touches rishon becomes a sheni. So it's nothing changed. It remains sheni like it was before. So how is he saying it? When they burnt it together, they added tumah on its tumah. How are they adding tumah? One's a rishon, the tumah min Torah. This sheni touched a rishon. One touched an av, however. One is like a rishon min Torah, and one is now a sheni. But if they didn't stop. They always burned them together. They didn't worry about more tumah. Where's the more tumah coming about? The sheni touching a rishon is still a sheni. So the Gemara answers. According to Rabbi Yochanan, what does Rav Chananya mean? He means like this. It wasn't a sheni that touched a rishon. It wasn't a 2 that touched a 1. It was a 3 that touched a 1. Remember, truma can go down to, or kodshim can go down to 4, right? So it was a 3 that touched a 1. A 3 touches a 1 becomes a 2, which is more severe. So shashlishi shenaga barishon nasa sheni. The 3 that touched the 1 became the 2. When he said the meat that was tamei because of vlad tumah, it means a vlada tumah. It means it's tamei because of a sheni and became a shlishi. And when they burnt it with meat which was tamei from an av and became a rishon, then the 3 touched the 1 and became a 2. And that's the extra tumah that they added on the tumah. They didn't stop them burning together, even though they increased tumah.
But I thought it's truma that can become a 3.
No, truma can go to 3, kodshim go to 4.
But if it's truma become a 3, then has a vlad become a 3?
No, this is talking about kodshim. Kodshim can go as far as 4.
Right. Okay.
Yeah? So Kodshim goes definitely further than Truma. Even Truma can only stop at 3, but Kodshim go to 4. So here, Kodshim must have touched a Sheni, Kodshim which was Tameh Sheni, and therefore it became a 3, and the 3 touched the 1, and therefore the 3 becomes the 2. Now the Gemara brings a brisa to support Bar Kapara. Remember Bar Kapara's pshat. Let's remind ourselves. According to Bar Kapara, he said one is Minat Torah and one is rabbinical, and they were prepared to burn the 2 together, even though one was rabbinically tameh and you made it biblically tameh. So let's see. Now we're going to bring support to Bar Kapara. We're going to ask against Rabbi Yochanan. Tani, Beis Shammai Omrim, Beis Shammai say, Ein Sarfin Basar Tahar, we do not burn Kodshim, which is Tahar. Now that means it's become possible Minat Torah for some other reason, like Noisar. It's not Tameh, yeah? Imagine you have meat which is past the eating time, right? It's Noisar. It's possible. You can't eat it. It's not Tameh. Didn't touch a sheretz or anything, but it's still possible. It's possible Minat Torah because there's something that's happened to it, but it's not Tameh. And we're told, don't burn it im basar tameh, with kosher meat, which is actually tameh, because you are now being metameh this meat. That's what Beis Shammai say. Beis Hillel matirin. Beis Hillel allow you to burn them together, because the meat that's tar is anyway pasul min Torah, anyway needs to be burnt.
Yeah.
Noisar, you can't leave it, you have to burn it, so it doesn't matter, you burn it with tameh meat, it doesn't matter, even though it's tar, burn it with tameh meat, it doesn't matter.
So when they're burning
What?
it, I assume that they're going to touch each other.
Well, this is, of course they will. Right? So Beis Shammai say don't do it, and Beis Hillel say you can do it. Now let's see.
Not cause anything.
What?
They don't have to touch each other.
Well, they will. But the idea of burning them together means they will. That's
Right.
if they're not touching. If they're not touching, the question doesn't start. Now, if the halach is like Beis Hillel, then Rav Hanania is speaking according to the view of Beis Hillel, and he seems to be adding on to what they're saying. So now Beis Hillel allowing you to burn your kodshim with your noisar, which is your tahar noisar. Now Date de Bar Kapara. Now Bar Kapara was the one who explained there's a Torah meat which is tameh, and there's a rabbinical meat. Al Date de Bar Kapara. According to Bar Kapara, that we're talking about meat which is only rabbinically tameh, which got burnt with the biblical one. Nich, I understand what he's telling you here now. What is this chiddush here? Beis Hillel were only speaking that what did Beis Hillel allow you to burn? Meat which is anyway pasul min Torah. It's not tameh, but at least it's pasul min Torah. That's what they allowed you to burn with meat which is tameh min Torah, right? But that's fair enough. But we're going further. Rabbinical tumah with biblical, yeah? So you understand he's going further. So Adate de Bar Kapara, Nicha.
The pasul meat is not tameh though.
It's not tameh, but Beis Hillel allowed you to burn the 2 together. So if they allowed you, but when it's at least pasul min Torah, they allowed you to burn it. And now we're coming along and going further. Now it's not psul, it's tameh, but it's only rabbinical. That's a big chiddush. So Adate de Bar Kapara, according to the view of Bar Kapara, the Rav Hanani was speaking on meat which is only rabbinically tameh, and that was the chiddush, you're allowed to burn it together. Nicha, I understand what Rav Hanani is coming to tell us. Because Beis Hillel only said, Sarfin, you can burn meat which has got a psul from the Torah, not because of tumah, but it's got some problem with it, min Torah, and you can burn that in psul tumas Torah, with meat which is tameh min Torah. There's a biblical problem with both meats, and Beis Hillel said you can burn them together, right? Even though you're actually defiling the meat which is tahar. But Sarachina and Mashma, and that's why Rav Hanania in our Mishnah says, you know what? I'm going to go further. I'm going to say you're even allowed to burn kodshim, which is permitted and roi completely from the Torah, but it's got a rabbinical tumah on it, tumas divrein, and you're allowed to burn that in tumas Torah, with a tumah which is from the Torah. So that's where Rav Hanina is going further than what Beis Hillel said. Beis Hillel allow Torah problematic item with tumah min Torah item, and Rav Hanina says even rabbinical item tumah with biblical item tumah. Fair enough. Because from Beis Hillel, we only learn you can burn that which is min Torah not fitting. We never learned that a rabbinical problem, you can start burning that with meat. It's only rabbinical is not fitting. Now, That's all very well, according to the way Bar Kapara understands it. But Ardati Rav Yochanan, according to the review of Rav Yochanan learned everything was possible min Torah. All the tumah was min Torah. Remember that? He said this is tummy min Torah. The other meat might be slightly different, lower level. It's also tummy min Torah. That's the way he understood Rav Chanina's Cohen. So according to the view of Rav Yochanan, that Rav Hanania spoke about meat which was tummy min Torah, then what is he coming to tell us that we don't know already? Because in Pesach Torah, in Tumas Torah Sofin, if Beis Hillel are telling us, look, something possible from the Torah, you can burn it with Tumah from the Torah. Even something, you hear this, even something possible, it's not Tahar, it's possible. Sorry. It is Tahar. It's not Tameh. It's possible. You can burn that with Tumah min Torah. So something which is biblically Tameh, but lower degree, of course you can burn that with something. You understand?
Right.
If already possible, which is Tahar, you can burn it, then a Tameh thing min Torah, you can definitely burn another Tameh meat, even though it might be slightly less. So Adated Rav Yochanan, according to the view of Rav Yochanan, that we talk about meat which was Tameh min Torah, and you can burn it with other meat which is Tameh min Torah. Okay, it might be slightly less. What is he telling us? In Psul Torah, in Tumas Torah and Sofin, if you're allowed to burn meat which has just got a psul, but it's tahar, with meat which is tamei min Torah, despite the fact that you're defining the meat that until now was tahar, because at the end of the day, look, it's not fitting, it needs burning, as the way Beis Hillel told us, then kol shekain, how much more so you should be allowed to burn tumas Torah, something which anyway is tamei min Torah, in tumas Torah, with other meat which is tamei min Torah, with other piece of meat, right? Because even though you're adding a little degree of impurity on it, you're defining it slightly worse, but we've already learned from Beis Hillel, if it's not fitting from the Torah and he's burning, we just don't care. But there's no tumah at all, you're still allowed to burn it. So of course we can understand that meat, not only that it needs burning, it's tamei min Torah, of course you can add a degree of tumah onto it. And what is Rav Hanania telling us with his evidence that we couldn't have learned from Beis Hillel themselves? If you're allowed to burn that which is tamei min Torah, so if it's tahar min Torah, but it's got a biblical problem, then of course you can burn something which is tamei min Torah with other meat which is tamei min Torah. So the Gemara answers, Hanania, Sigana Kohenim, Shania, he learned his words not in the name of Beis Hillel, but Mishay Beis Shammai of Beis Hillel. He's also fitting in according to Beis Shammai as well. Now, there's no Chiddush in Beis Hillel, as we just said, but there is a Chiddush in Beis Shammai. Even Beis Shammai. Now, Beis Shammai were the ones who said, do not burn tahar problematic meat. Tahar noisar. Do not burn it with tamei meat. Beis Shammai say, don't do it. But they still allow you to burn meat which is already tamei with meat which is a more severe tumah. You understand? Beis Shammai said, you're not allowed to burn your noisar with your meat which is tamei. Beis Shammai didn't allow it. But this thing they will allow. That if it's already got a degree of tumah min Torah, you can burn it with something more severe tumah min Torah. Amar Rabbana, Kumei Rabbi Yosef. Now Rabbana comes along and he's going to ask against Bar Kapara. Bar Kapara was the one who said that everything is min. Bar Kapara was the one who said one is min Torah, one is rabbinical. Yeah. Amar Rabbana, Kumei Rabbi Yosef. Adate Rabbi Yochanan Nicha. According to the view of Rabbi Yochanan, I understand. Rav Hanania is speaking about meat, tamei min Torah. I understand why they burnt it, because kodshim, which is tamei, needs burning. According to Bar Kapara, we're talking about meat which is tamei, only rabbinically tamei. You're allowed to burn it with, but it's only rabbinically tamei. But why are they burning it? Because we've learned in certain cases of doubt and things, we don't burn kodshim if there's cases of doubt. Da'amar Rav Yochanan, Shisha Sveikas, there are 6 examples of doubts in Taharas where the Chachamim put definite Gezer Tumah, but there was, in the beginning they were saying, look, don't burn Truma as a result of that. Abayin, they wouldn't eat the Truma if it's tamei from these things, but they wouldn't burn it either. The same thing with Kodshim. And also when the Sanhedrin sat Be'usha later on after the destruction, and they put a decree that Truma that's tamei from these things, Sreifa needs to be burnt. So, but earlier on, they never used to burn things when you had these cases. So Rav Hanania is Gana Kohenim, Laila Kohenim LaUshahaya. He lived before Usha, before the time of Sanhedrin. But Kohenim LaUsha, Laila Haisa Sreifa LeDivrein. For especially Kodshim, which is tamei rabbinically, there was no obligation to burn it at all. So why is he saying they didn't stop burning it with tamei things minat Torah, but they shouldn't have been burning? They weren't burning these things tamei rabbanon. They were not burning it. So how can you understand that? So Rav Yosef answers, Tifta, we're talking about a case with Bar Kapara, Shenitma b'kli zechuchis. The meat became tamei by touching a glass vessel which was tamei, which is rabbinically tamei, but as opposed to the 6 cases of Sophic Tumah, where the Chachamim said toilin, like leave it, don't burn it, but with the glass keli which became tamei, they said from the beginning, anything that's tamei because of it needs burning. You hear that? So glass was a different din. Even though it's only rabbinically tamei, the din from the beginning was you have to burn it. And then Rav Hanania comes along and tells us that you can burn this thing which is rabbinically tamei with meat which is biblically tamei. Amalei, but Ramana pushes away that answer. He says, I feel a tema, even if you're going to tell me that mitzvah, the meat was tamei because it touched a kli zechuchis, a glass vessel which is tamei, but we still have a question about kapara. Because like Cain Rav Zo'ira, didn't Rav Zo'ira say in Rav Avuna, V'shem Rav Yirmiyah, Yosef ben Yezer Yisrael, Yosef ben Yechon Yerushalmi, Gazru Tumah Eretz Ha'amim, they put a gzeira on all the nations of Chutz La'aretz, it should be tamei, V'al klei zechuchis, all glass vessels they receive tumah. Rav Yehuda Nama, Yehuda ben Tabai, Shim ben Chatach, Gazru al klei matchis, they also put tumah on metal vessels. Hillel the Shammai, Gazru al taras yadayim, they put a gzeira that person's hands are tamei as a sheni in a tumah. You have to do natilas yadayim before you touch truma. Now, Rabbi Yirmiyah mentions all these gezeiras, right, of a clay, a glass keli, tumah of going abroad. Sounds like they're all the same. Just like tumah of the nations, they put gezeira, truma should be held, yitlu, or leave it, if it's tamei because of it. Don't burn it. So the same thing with glass. From the gezeira from the beginning, you're tailor the truma, you leave it, don't burn it, don't eat it, but don't burn it. And that's why the Hesper of Yossi, that the Eidos in our Mishnah is talking about meat which touched a kli zechuchis tamei, that doesn't answer the question. Why did the Kohanim burn the meat because of this tumah? Because in the days of Hananiah, they were not burning meat because of this. It was put together with all the other xeras. It's wrong what you're saying they always burn meats which touch glass kalim. It's not true. So the Gemara answers, Rav Yirmiyah, Sava Mema, Rav Yirmiyah, who mentioned the 2 gezeras together, he mentioned the metal and the glass and the Eretz Ha'amim, Sava Mema, he wanted to say, the Eretz Ha'amim, or Klei Zechuchis, tumah of abroad, and the glass kalim, that was that truma, that tluya, you have to leave truma as it is, you don't burn it. Yeah, that's all very well. But Rav Yosef Sava Mema, but Rav Yosef held that only Eretz Ha'amim, the tumah abroad, they said tluya, you leave truma as it is. Because more in Usha there were guys that you should burn truma because of it. But the tumah of klei zechuchis, the other tumah mentioned in that list, the glass vessels, the beginning of the gzeira of Yosef ben Yezer and Yosef ben Yochanan was that truma that's tamei because of it is sreifa, is burnt. He always held you have to burn things with glass. And therefore Rabbi Yosef explained that according to Bar Kapara, we're talking about kodshim, which is tamei rabbinical tumah, which touched glass, and Rav Chananah who lived many years after Yosef ben Yezer and Yosef ben Yochanan, he tells us that when they burned this sort of meat, they did not refrain from burning it with meat which was tamei min Torah. So it became rabbinically tamei because of glass, and they always used to burn things attaching to glass, but nevertheless they did not refrain from burning it with meat which is tamei from the Torah. Now, you still with me, Rabbi Isai? Good. So now, after, it's nice to get involved in a sugya, isn't it?
I'm fancying a nice steak now.
We should have had steaks today. Now, after the Gemara mentions that the Mishnah in Taharas mentions 6 cases of Safek Tumah, where we burn Truma as a result, the Gemara brings now all the 6 cases, as we are quoted over there in the Mishnah there. These are the 6 cases of Tumah where you burn Truma as a result. Our Safek Beis Hapras, which is a field where, of course, we're worried maybe there is bones which is buried there, and one who walks there maybe a tummy from these bones that are buried there. Our Safek Eretz Ha'amim, taking earth abroad, Chutz La'aretz says Safek maybe there's dead people around. Our Safek Big Day Amaretz, a Safek maybe the tummy from Tamei Amaretz who's got Ziva, etc. Our Safek Kalim and Imsain, a Safek of doubt of Kalim, maybe the Safek maybe there's from a Zav, these things belong to a Zav or a mace. Al Safek Roikek. This is like a tumah of saliva. Well, the saliva is Safek, it might be from a Zav or Zava. And Safek Me Ragle Adam, the Safek of urine, Shu Keneged Me Ragle Behema. That all people's urine, there's a Gzera tumah, maybe they come from Zav or Zava, or that which is Tameh, even if they're from Meraglaim of a Behema, maybe these are from an animal, they come from Behema Tar. There's various fakers there. Maybe they came from a person or an animal. Even if they came from a person, maybe he's Tahar. But still they put Gezerah, a proper definite tumah on it, and we would burn Truma as a result. Avadai Magan, Shul Safek Tumasan. Now in a situation where we know that one of these things touched a definite Truma, which is a Safek Tumah in Truma, because it's a suffix. Did these things touch Truma? Are they definitely Tameh or not? On these fakers, Elu, Sofin is a Truma. We will burn Truma. Once we're Mesakin, that these things are considered definitely Tameh, then we will burn Truma if it touches it. But in the case of where you don't know if it touched, where we don't know for sure, then, okay, if we don't know, did it touch Truma? We don't know, then it's not going to be burned. Okay. Allah Chazai. Now, I'll be honest, the next sugyas are still a continuation of this give evidence. We're not finished. The next halachas till the end of the perek are still a continuation. So let's see now. So now we're going to still carry on of what we spoke about burning kodshim, which is tameh. And we said Rav Hanani Sagana Kohenim gave that evidence. They never refrained the Kohenim of the Beis Mikdash from burning kodshim, which is tameh from a blada tumah, with meat, which is kodshim, which is tameh with an ava tumah, despite the fact that they are increasing the tumah. Now the Gemara brings a similar din with truma. Let's see now. Haisif Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva added something on. Sounds like he's adding on to the previous Mishnah. We shall see. Watch this space. Haisif Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva adds on. Me'men shall kohenim. In all the days of the kohenim, lo nimnu lahadlik es hashemen, they did not refrain from burning oil of truma, shenifsal, which became tameh by touching a tvul yom, and therefore became a shlishi, the oil of truma which became a shlishi. They did not refrain from burning it, bener, in a candle, shenitma b'tmei mace, which was touched by someone who was touching a dead body, someone who'd been with a dead body, a person tameh from a mace, where the person is an avatuma. So they did not refrain from burning truma oil, shlishi truma oil, in a ner touched by a person who's an av hatuma. And then the ner which he touches also metal becomes the same thing, becomes an avatuma. If the ner is made of metal, so the ner is the avatuma. So they take the oil which is a shlishi and put it in the ner which is an av. But they always did it. Afar-pi shemaisifin lo tuma al tumasa, even though they increased the tuma on its tuma. In the beginning, the oil was a shlishi. Now it's touching the ner, which is an av, and therefore it becomes a rishon. It touches an av and becomes a rishon. Now, the wording of the Mishnah, Rabbi Kiva added, hoisif Rabbi Kiva. Sounds like he's telling me something which we do not know already, and that Rav Hanani Sagana Kohenim never told me this. He's obviously going further than that. Hoisif, he's adding something on. Now, we brought two interpretations to the Eidos of what Rav Hanani was saying. According to Bar Kapara, the Eidos was they burnt kodshim, which is tamei rabbinically, with kodshim, which is tamei min HaTorah. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the Kohenim burnt meat, which was a shlishi min HaTorah, with meat, which was a rishon min HaTorah. So now we can understand how is the Chiddush of Rabbi Kiva fitting in according to those two opinions. Adate Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan said everything was min HaTorah, it was shlishi and rishon. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, what's Rabbi Kiva telling us? Tamam, in the previous Mishnah, he told us, Rav Hanani Sagana Kohenim, so in Tumas Torah, two things which are tamei ben Torah, one is a 1, one is a 3, you can burn them together. Right? When there is you're increasing the tumah to something which is already tamei. The 3 is already called tamei, because it can be tamei more kodshim, because 3 can make a 4 with kodshim, right? And now they're adding more tumah, they're making it into a sheni. If now Rabbi Kiva comes along, he's obviously telling us more. He's saying you can even burn psul Torah something which is pasul min Torah, not tamei, pasul min Torah, in tumas Torah, with something which is pasul min Torah, with something which is tamei min Torah. That they made from the shlishi in truma. Now shlishi in truma is only a psul. It can't go and defile any more truma. Truma only stops at 3. It can't go to 4. So shlishi is pasul, because when you make it tamei, it stops there. It can't defile more truma. Kodshim it can defile to make kodshim into a 4, but truma has to stop at 3. So therefore, if they made a shlishi of truma, which is pasul, not tamei, 3 can't make 4 in truma, you make it into a rishon, which is more. Now you're adding tuma. Now you can make it a psul will be tamei, because now it can defile more things. But Ardaz, so there I understand. You had a 3 which is pasul min Torah. You make it a 1. The 3 was only pasul. It couldn't go further. But now it might be tamei, but it was only pasul because it couldn't go further. You understand the different understanding now. We're saying it was pasul min Torah. It was tamei, but it's called pasul because it couldn't go further. And now you're burning that in a rishon, in an av, whatever, it becomes a rishon. Fair enough. But Ardate de Bar Kapara, according to Bar Kapara, that one is min Torah, one is rabbinical. Tamam, in the previous Mishnah, he told us, Sofin tumas divren and tumas Torah. You can burn rabbinical tamei things with biblical tamei things, right? That which is rabbinically up tamei with that which is tamei min Torah. Despite the fact you are defining it much more, it was tamei till now only rabbinical, and now you're increasing it. But in our Mishnah, what is Rabbi Kiva telling us? You're allowed to burn psul Torah in tumas Torah. Something which is pasul min Torah with something which is tamei min Torah. Something pasul min Torah with tamei min Torah. So they're both, that's not such a chiddush. That's pasul min Torah, that's tamei min Torah. But they're both problematic on the Torah respect. Whereas the previous Mishnah, according to Bar Kapara at least, one was rabbinical, one was biblical. Fair enough. But what's Rabbi Kiva adding? Because now you're telling me, well, that's pasul from Torah, and that's Torah min Torah. But they're both pasul min Torah. Therefore, loiba ela livchais. Rabbi Kiva is telling me less than what Rav Hanania told me. He's teaching me a smaller chiddush. But the Mishnah says Rabbi Kiva is haisif on his edus. Or Rav Hanania is gana kohenim. He seems to be telling me a bigger chiddush. But according to what you're telling me is both min Torah. He's not telling me a bigger chiddush. So the Gemara answers. Tifta, we can explain that according to Bar Kapara, the edus of Rabbi Kiva is talking about Tvul Yom with Beis HaPras. So you have a Tvul Yom, someone who's rabbinically tamei. He's been in the field, which was tamei, while he went into this field where there might be a grave somewhere in that field, and he's gone in the mikveh, and he's not yet had a sunset. Shuhu, so now he's been in the mikveh, so he's now rabbinically tamei, right? Shuhu midivrein, he's only rabbinically tamei. He's only a Tvul Yom midrabanan. He would pasul the oil of truma only rabbinically. And Rabbi Kiva gives evidence that Kohenim would light this rabbinical problematic oil in an air which became defiled from a tamei mace, from someone who's tamei tumas mace min Torah. And through that, the oil, which until now was pasul rabbinically, becomes tamei min haTorah. You hear that? It's oil touched by a Tvul Yom, which was a rabbinical problematic. He's been in the mikveh, he needs sunset. Rabbinically problematic oil, you're putting it in a nair touched by someone who's touched a mace, and therefore you're making it tamei min haTorah. And now we can understand how Rabbi Kiva is adding on to Rav Hanania. Rav Hanania gave evidence that you're allowed to make something tamei drabanan and burn it with tamei min Torah. Rabbi Kiva is saying something which is pasul drabanan, not tamei drabanan, pasul drabanan, and now you're making it tamei min Torah. You hear that? So until now we had tamei drabanan burning it with tamei min Torah. That was from Hanania according to this understanding. Now it's the oil touched by a Tvul Yom, and the Tvul Yom is only rabbinical, so the oil becomes pasul rabbinically, not tamei, pasul rabbinically, yeah, pasul rabbinically, and you're now going to make it tamei min Torah. Now, after the Gemara has answered that question of Bar Kapara from our Mishnah, it now turns to Rav Yochanan. Now the Gemara brought a brisa. Beis Shammai said you should not burn your kodshim, which is pasul if it's not tamei, with other kodshim, which is tamei. Remember that Beis Shammai? Beis Hillel allowed it. The Gemara asked on the explanation of Rav Yochanan from Rav Hanania, and according to his words, Rav Hanania gave evidence. Meat which is kodshim, which is already tamei min Torah, you can increase the tumah more. Now, if Beis Hillel allow you even to defile meat, kodshim, which is pasul, which is tahar, we said, that was the question we brought. It's anyway tahar, and they allow you to defile that, it's also, but it's still tahar, like the noisa, then of course, you can increase tumah to the meat, which is tamei min Torah. And we asked, why is Rav Hanania giving evidence on something when Beis Hillel says it's allowed? The Gemara answered that Rav Hanania said his words also according to Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. He was telling us if the meat was ready tamei min Torah, even Beis Shammai would agree. Usually they said don't start burning the meat together. But here, if it's tamei, if it's in the case where the meat was already tamei min Torah, even Beis Shammai agree you're allowed to increase the tumah by burning it with other meat. That's what we said before. Now the Gemara is going to ask on the understanding of Rav Yochanan with the evidence of Rabbi Akiva now. Now we've got Rabbi Akiva, and how do we understand with this brisa? Now we've got Rabbi Akiva on the scene. So earlier on we said that according to Rav Yochanan, Rav Hanania Zegan HaKohenim, Shani B'Shem Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel. He could fit in his words also according to Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Even Beis Shammai agree you're allowed to increase tumah to meat, which is tamei min Torah. That's what we said. But how will Rav Yochanan explain the evidence of Rabbi Akiva? What's Rabbi Akiva telling us then? What is he telling us more that we didn't know already? According to Rav Yochanan, Rabbi Akiva is telling you you can burn something which is pasul min Torah with something which is tamei min Torah. And that is exactly the words of Beis Hillel. You can burn something pasul min Torah with something which is tamei min Torah. That's what Beis Hillel told me. So what's Rabbi Akiva adding then? That's exactly what Beis Hillel said. So the Gemara answers, Amr Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Akiva Kedate. He said his evidence according to his own view. Rabbi Akiva, now Rabbi Akiva said, it says in the parsha of the insects, the shrotzim, it says every keli, kli cheres, an earthenware keli, where a sheretz falls inside, anything is inside is tamei. If a sheretz, a dead sheretz, falls in the airspace of an earthenware vessel, the keli becomes tamei, becomes a rishon l'tumah. Any food in the keli are tamei from the keli, they become a sheni. Now the pasuk doesn't say tamei, it says yitma. We learn lashon yitame. It tells me that food which is a sheni can be metame, can defile other food and make it a shlishi, devar Torah, from the din of the Torah. That the food which is in this kli cheres, with the sheretz, is tamei and becomes a sheni and can defile other food. Now, just like Rabbi Akiva darshans this with food, he also darshans it with liquids. But the pasuk just after that says, the keli will become tamei. It says, Mekala echel, all the food which are eaten, or anything which has water falls on it is tamei, all the drinks in the keli is tamei. So the word yitma is also used for liquids. And that's also used, according to Rabbi Akiva, yitame, that the liquids which are tamei become a sheni, can defile other things to make it a shlishi. Okay? Now, if that's the case, that the view of Rabbi Akiva is that liquids can be metame other things min ha-Torah. According to this, we understand what Rabbi Akiva's chiddush is with his evidence. It's something which we never knew from Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel said, you can burn kodshim, which is pasul, which is tahar. You remember that? Kodshim is pasul, is your noisa, yeah? Which is tahar. And you can burn it with your basa, which is kodshim, which is tamei. And you're allowed to burn it with meat, which is a shlishi. Because the meat that is pasul, it becomes a revi, which is pasul, it can't defile other things. And also, we learn that truma, which is pasul not because of tumah, you're allowed to burn it with truma, which is like a sheni, and that way you passel it, it makes it a shlishi. Again, shlishi and truma is a psul, it stops there. It's not going to tamei and tamei other things. We cannot learn from their words that, let's say, revi in kodshim, or shlishi and truma, which is pasul, can you make that a rishon? Have we learned that? You can do that? No. We've said you can burn it where it stays at its end. We never said you can take a revi in kodshim and burn it with a rishon. We never said that. It's tamei, it can be with tamei other things. Comes along Rabbi Akiva. What is Rabbi Akiva's chiddush? He says oil, which is pasul from truma, shemen oil, which is pasul from truma, you're allowed to make it a rishon, which is tamei and it defiles other things. And same thing, revi in kodshim, you can make it a rishon. You hear that? He's going to the extreme. He's saying something which is a revi, you can be metamei it, this oil, and make it a rishon. Rav Mana answers, the chiddush and the evidence of Rabbi Akiva is based on his shitta that he learns the word yitma can mean yitamei. That ayachal sheni can make a shlishi. And he says the same thing with liquids. A liquid which is a sheni can make a shlishi. And therefore through the oil it becomes a rishon. And it has more koyach to be metamei other things. Now there are opinions who argue on this. They hold the evidence is accepted even those who argue on this drasha. Even though Rabbi Shmuel doesn't hold with this drasha of yitma yitamei ba'eichlin, he says when it says with the food, anything is inside is tamei, all the food that can be eaten is tamei, he doesn't learn lashon yitamei, that second sheni food, which is sheni, can make a shlishi with chulin, right? He's talking about chulin. Truma maybe, but with chulin, who says food which is a sheni can make a shlishi with chulin? Who says? Islay, he does hold of the drasha yitma yitame b'kelim. He does darshan. It says with liquids and all the liquids which can be drunk in every kli is yitma. He darshans it yitame. The liquids which are tame from a keli, which is tame from a sheretz, can go and be matame another vessel or food. So even Rabbi Shmuel agrees the oil of truma, which is a shlishi, you put it in the ner, which is an avatuma, it becomes a rishon. It has more koyach to defile other things, which it never had before. The shlishi becomes a rishon. Maybe with foods, we won't go that far. You hear that? Chulin, sheni, maybe not, but we can make a shlishi. Truma, yes, but not chulin. But liquids, yes. Liquids can go back to being a rishon, and they be matame. Right? This you would have come across this idea that liquids go back to being a rishon. Yeah, they can be matame and things. So even if Shmuel agrees that the oil of truma, which is a shlishi, you put it in an air, which is an av, it becomes a rishon. He has more koach to defile other things which you never had before, and that is a chiddush and the evidence of Rabbi Akiva, which we never learned from Beis Hillel. Now, Rabbi Akiva gave evidence that the Kohanim would light the shemen of truma, which is pasul, in a ner which is tamei from a tamei mace. Now, the Gemara understands the ner was an avatuma. Now, we're going to bring two girsas in the Mishnah who argue how is the ner an avatuma. So here's to know, Tani, there's some who want to learn the Mishnah that they lit the oil in a ner tamei mace. It was an avatuma from tamei mace. It was tamei from the mace itself. The ner was tamei from the mace. Here's to know, Tani, some want to learn it was a ner that was tamei bitmei mace. Like a girs in our Mishnah, it was tamei from someone who was an avatuma because he became tamei of the mace. A person was an av, he touched the mace, he became an avatuma, and the ner touched this person and came tamei from him. And even so, the ner becomes an avatuma like him. Now, two different ways of learning. Now, Mandama, the one who said that the gear says they lit their oil in ner of tamei mace, it's an avatuma, tumas mace, it became tamei from the dead person itself, b'kli shatef. It's like a wooden kli, a ner made from wood. It's tamei, tuma, the source is from a mace. It's a lower level, one way from that which defiled it. If it touched a person, which is tamei mace, the person is an avatuma, the ner is berishon. If it touches the mace itself, which is avi avois hatuma, the ner becomes an avatuma. So since we're talking about a ner like this, Rabbi Akiva says it's tamei mace. It's an avatuma from tumas mace. It became tamei from a mace itself. And only when it's tamei from the mace itself, it becomes an avatuma. Ma'anda Amar, according to the one who said that they lit the oil in a ner, which was tamei bitmei mace, that means it became tamei from a person who was an avatuma from Tumas Mace. That person became tummy from mace. Then it's talking about Bekli Matachos, a metal vessel, a nair made from metal. A metal vessel, there's special chumrah with Tumas Mace, that if it's tameh from someone who's tameh from the mace, which is the avatuma, it becomes an avatuma like it. Yeah, the metal vessel takes the level of where it came from. It's not 1 degree lower, it keeps the vessel the level of where it came. Therefore, if we're talking about that nair, Rabbi Akiva says it's tameh b'tmei mace, and that way it becomes an avatuma. Now the Gemara asks on that explanation, which we said according to the first version, ma tama, according to the version of ner tameh mace, why did we fit the Mishnah with like wooden kalim or other kalim which have tahara by going in the mikveh? Why not an earthenware vessel? If we're talking about a keli where it's tameh from the mace, the tumah goes down one level, it becomes an av. Why do they choose an example of ner of wood or other vessel, not an earthenware vessel? It's much more common. So the Gemara answers, it says in the Torah with an earthenware vessel, which is in a tent with a dead body, if it hasn't got a lid, then it's tamehu. The earthenware vessel in the same room as the mace is tameh. The word who tells me who the earthenware vessel is tameh. Ve'ena nasa avatuma does not become an av l'tameh to defile other kalim. We cannot therefore fit in Rabbi Akiva the ner of cheres, because that ner would not become an avatuma even if it received tuma from the mace itself. Okay, we will stop here, Rabbi Sai.